Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right? Meditating, visualizing, journaling, repeating your affirmations, and yet somehow, the reality you crave keeps slipping just out of reach, like a mirage that vanishes the moment you step toward it. That's not failure. That's vibrational drift. It's the invisible pull of your old frequency reclaiming the space you tried to reprogram. You see, the universe isn't responding to your effort. It's responding to your embodiment. And most people don't realize that collapsing a new timeline isn't about intensity, it's about stability. You don't get what you desire, you get what your nervous system believes is safe. And that belief? It's encoded in your frequency. Every time you reach for something new, your past identity whispers, "But who do you think you are?" And unless you shift the observer, not just the vision, your signal begins to fluctuate. Doubt creeps in, the mind overthinks, the field gets noise. And the quantum doesn't collapse around noise. It collapses around coherence. That's why the timeline you've been trying to manifest hasn't stabilized. Not because you're not worthy, but because your energy hasn't fully attuned. But here's the truth they don't teach in manifestation books. The future is not a destination you reach. It's a frequency you remember. And right now, that version of you who already lives in the timeline of love, purpose, abundance, they're not far away. They're entangled with you. What you're about to learn in this video is not how to chase a better life, but how to become the signal that magnetizes it. Because once you know how to hold the frequency without slipping, reality bends, effortlessly, quantumly. So stay with me, because in the next minutes, we're going to decode the exact mechanics of how to collapse a new timeline, and more importantly, how to stay inside it without falling back. Most people don't realize that the version of themselves they're trying to become already exists, not as an abstract wish, but as a vibrational blueprint imprinted in the quantum field, quietly pulsing, waiting for coherence to lock it into form. The problem is, we've been trained to think that change requires force, that new realities must be chased down with action and proof. But the field doesn't operate through effort, it operates through resonance. Think about this. When a tuning fork vibrates, it doesn't scream to influence another, it simply holds its tone, and the matching fork across the room begins to hum back in perfect harmony. That's how the quantum works. It doesn't need your struggle, it needs your signal. But vibrational drift happens when you hold a new tone for a moment, then fall back into the static of your old identity. You say, "I am abundant," but still flinch when the bill comes. You affirm love, but scan the room for rejection. That's not your fault. It's your nervous system rehearsing an outdated script. And here's the cosmic catch. The universe doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you stabilize. Your words may ask for expansion, but if your body is bracing for contraction, the signal becomes incoherent. That's the real reason why so many timelines start to form and then dissolve. Not because they weren't real, but because you didn't stay consistent long enough to hold the field in place. The secret? Stop chasing alignment and start becoming it, so fully that the drift has nowhere left to land. Because when you truly embody a new frequency, you don't manifest change, you collapse into it. So let me ask you this. You know that feeling? You wake up with clarity, set your intentions, maybe even feel inspired for a few hours. And then suddenly, without warning, the old version of you pulls you back like gravity. It's subtle at first. A text that triggers doubt, an unexpected bill, a silence from someone you hoped would respond. And just like that, you're spiraling, not because the external world changed, but because your frequency dipped back into the emotional signature of the old timeline. That's the pain no one talks about, the heartbreak of almost becoming, the exhaustion of trying to hold a new identity while your nervous system still remembers how to survive inside the old one. You begin to wonder, am I broken? Why does this feel so hard? Why do I keep looping when I've done all the right things? The truth is, you're not broken, you're misaligned. And misalignment doesn't mean you're failing. It just means you're still vibrating from a place that no longer fits who you're becoming. It's like trying to stream a new song on an outdated radio. No matter how beautiful the music, the static keeps cutting it off. That static? It's emotional residue. It's the unprocessed fear, the stored memory in your cells, the inherited belief systems you never agreed to but kept replaying like background noise. And until you learn how to transmute that noise into signal, how to clear the interference, you'll keep watching your timelines dissolve just as they begin to form. But here's the shift. What if that emotional static wasn't your enemy but your portal? What if the very feelings that trigger you are the access points to recalibrate your entire frequency field? That's not just emotional work, it's quantum reprogramming. And once you learn how to turn your pain into precision, the drift stops. Not because the world got easier, but because your signal got stronger. Which brings us to the next phase. Here's the thing no one told you. Vibrational drift isn't random. It's rhythmic, patterned, and almost always predictable if you know where to look. The key is becoming hyper-aware of your energetic pivot points, those micro moments where your frequency begins to slip, not with a scream, but with a whisper. It might start with a sigh when you check your bank account, a subtle clench in your chest when you see someone else's success, or that quiet inner voice that says, "Nothing ever really changes." These are not just passing thoughts or emotions. They are the quantum signals recalibrating your field back to the timeline you're trying to leave. And this is where most people miss the miracle. They try to force positive thinking over their nervous system's default settings. But in the quantum realm, resistance only strengthens the loop. What works instead? Observation without judgment. Noticing the frequency shift and choosing deliberately, compassionately, precisely to re-enter the frequency of the new timeline. This is where the most powerful technique begins, the frequency flip. It's not affirmation, not forced positivity. It's an embodied redirection. It looks like catching yourself mid-doubt and whispering, "Ah, that's the old signal. I remember this fear, but it's not me anymore." It feels like placing your hand on your heart when anxiety rises and breathing into the new version of you who already feels peace. It sounds like interrupting an internal spiral with the phrase, "Let's play a better movie." These tiny energetic moves may seem insignificant, but they are how timelines bend. Because every time you interrupt the drift and choose presence over pattern, you strengthen a new neural and vibrational pathway. And the more often you do it, the more stable your signal becomes. This is how you collapse a new timeline, not with one grand shift, but with 1,000 conscious pivots back into coherence. So now that you've seen how drift begins, the next step is precision. Imagine if your nervous system came with a dashboard, a real-time indicator that tells you exactly when you're slipping out of alignment. The truth is, it already does. Your body is a quantum feedback system, constantly broadcasting your state through sensation. Tight chest? That's a signal. Shallow breath? A cue. Sudden fatigue when you think about your goals? A vibrational misfire. These aren't problems, they're precise data points from your inner field alerting you to frequency drift. But most people ignore these cues, or worse, override them with mental noise. That's why they stay stuck in loops. Not because they lack power, but because they miss the messages. So here's the shift. Start treating your body like a vibrational compass. Build what I call the inner frequency detection system. Step 1. Name the signal. When discomfort rises, don't run. Ask, what frequency am I on right now? Lack, fear, shame? Precision begins with naming. Step 2. Decode the drift. Every emotional pattern is tied to a belief. When you feel resistance, ask, what belief is creating this feeling? Maybe it's, I'm not safe to expand, or success means I'll lose something. Bring it to the surface because what you reveal you can rewire. Step 3. Flip the field. This is where quantum becomes practical. Use micro body shifts. Change your posture, deepen your breath, shake your hands, move your energy physically. Then pair it with a pivot phrase. A custom mantra that reminds your field who you really are. Something like, I am the frequency of receiving, or this fear is not my future. When done consistently, these moves create an internal alert system so sharp that drift becomes impossible to ignore. And over time, the moments of slippage shrink, the returns to alignment quicken, and your reality begins to reflect the new signal. Not occasionally, but consistently. You stop hoping for timelines, you start anchoring them. But this system only works when your nervous system trusts the new frequency. Here's a truth most manifestation teachers avoid. You can't fully collapse into a new timeline if your body doesn't feel safe inside it. You might consciously desire abundance, love, visibility, but if your nervous system has been wired to associate those things with danger, betrayal, or loss, it will unconsciously sabotage the shift to protect you. Not because it hates change, but because it equates the unfamiliar with threat. This is survival intelligence, brilliant, ancient, and completely at odds with expansion, unless you consciously rewire it. So how do you make the quantum feel safe? You teach your body, gently and repetitively, that it can hold more without breaking. This begins with embodiment, not visualizing success, but feeling into it as if it's happening now. Try this. Sit quietly. Imagine your most desired future as vividly as possible. Now scan your body. Where is there contraction? What part tightens when you picture overflow? That's your nervous system resisting expansion. And instead of overriding it, breathe into it, soften it. Let your body know it's safe to receive. Then go deeper. Ask, when did I first learn that receiving wasn't safe? Let the memory rise. Often it's not about money or success at all. It's about a parent's disapproval, a moment of loss, a betrayal that taught your cells to shrink in order to stay safe. But here's the good news. The body doesn't need time to heal. It needs signal. When you anchor safety in the now, the old patterns begin to dissolve. Use touch, breath, music, movement. These are the tools that rewire your field. Combine them with new emotional anchors, moments where your nervous system feels joy, peace, freedom without threat. The more often you visit these states, the more familiar they become. And familiarity is what the body trusts. When your nervous system stops flinching at your expansion, your field becomes magnetic, not because of what you want, but because of what you embody. So the question becomes, the reason most people drift back isn't because they lack desire. It's because they never crossed the threshold from trying to being. They dip their toes into a new frequency, taste a moment of expansion, but deep down, they're still trying it on, like a costume, waiting for reality to validate the shift before fully committing. But quantum reality doesn't work that way. The field doesn't mirror your effort. It mirrors your essence. You don't get to wait and see if the new timeline is safe. You declare it safe by stepping into it completely, without a fallback plan. This is the pivot from performance to embodiment. From saying the words, "I am abundant," to actually walking through your home like you already are. From visualizing love to waking up each day as if you are already deeply, wildly loved. This isn't fake it till you make it. It's a line until you collapse it. The most magnetic people you know, the ones who radiate confidence, joy, stability, they're not forcing reality. They've simply stabilized in a frequency so clearly that the field has no choice but to reflect it. And that's stabilization. It happens when you stop flirting with your future and start marrying it. Make it your baseline. Let it bleed into your posture, your decisions, your tone of voice, your silence. Let it become so familiar that anything less than that vibration feels foreign. Because here's the secret. Once the new frequency becomes your home, it stops being a dream and starts being inevitable. You are no longer seeking, you're broadcasting. You are no longer chasing timelines. You are collapsing into them through coherence. And coherence isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. So now that we've anchored this truth in your system, it's time for the ultimate shift. This is the moment most people fall off the path, the in-between. the space where you've shifted your identity, recalibrated your field, held the frequency for days or even weeks. But the external world hasn't caught up yet. The old life is fading, the new one hasn't fully landed, and everything inside you screams, "Maybe I made it all up." This liminal zone is the crucible of coherence. It's where your nervous system wants proof, your ego wants control, and your field is testing your signal for stability. And this is where vibrational drift is most likely to strike. Not because the shift failed, but because your subconscious interprets delay as danger. But delay isn't danger. It's data. The field is reorganizing. The timeline is taking form. The signal has been sent, and your job now is not to push. It's to hold. Hold the frequency when the results aren't visible. Hold the identity when your mind wants to doubt. Hold the breath, the posture, the tone of the future as if it already is. This is vibrational resilience, the ability to remain coherent inside a gap that used to trigger collapse. Think of it like flying through turbulence. You don't jump out of the plane because the ride got shaky. You stay in your seat, trust the system, and keep moving forward. In quantum terms, the turbulence is just your old reality resisting its own expiration. And the moment you stop negotiating with it, the moment you stop asking, "Is it working?" and start saying, "This is who I am," the energy stabilizes. Your field becomes unfuckwithable. Your timeline becomes non-negotiable. And the collapse? It becomes imminent. Because now, even in the silence, the delay, the doubt, you've become a vibrational match to the version of you who never needed proof to become real. What if I told you that the speed at which your reality shifts doesn't depend on how much you want it, but on how much weight your frequency carries? This isn't metaphor, it's mechanics. In the quantum field, not all vibrations are created equal. Some are scattered, light, hesitant, like static on a broken radio. Others are dense with clarity, conviction, embodiment. These are the signals the field responds to instantly because they're energetically undeniable. This vibrational weight isn't force, it's coherence multiplied by consistency. It's when your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions all broadcast the same message: "I'm already there." The reason most people's manifestations delay isn't because they're wrong, it's because they're signal flickers. One moment they're in alignment, the next they're doubting, comparing, shrinking. That wobble weakens the collapse. The field hesitates not because it's punishing, but because it's precise. So how do you increase your vibrational mass? You embody your frequency through repetition. You repeat the identity, the state, the tone of the future until it becomes the only reality your body recognizes. It's in the morning rituals, the breath before decisions, the silence between thoughts. You tune your nervous system like an instrument, refining it until every cell hums the same signal. You remove the emotional weight of the old timeline, bit by bit, memory by memory, so that the new one has room to solidify. And then comes the tipping point, when the signal you're holding becomes so stable that the quantum field begins bending around you. You stop chasing alignment and start becoming gravitational. People feel it. Opportunities shift. Life moves. Not because you forced it, but because you tuned into it so powerfully that it couldn't ignore you. That is the moment when timelines collapse in days, not years. And now that you're anchored in this magnetic clarity, there's only one thing left to do. Let this be the moment you stop visiting your desired frequency and start living from it. Because true transformation isn't about intensity, it's about integration. The collapse of a new timeline doesn't happen in one breakthrough meditation or one perfect journaling session. It happens when your new frequency becomes so familiar, so embodied, that even brushing your teeth or checking your email becomes a continuation of your aligned signal. So here's your closing practice, the frequency loop method. Each morning, before the world gets noisy, ask yourself, what timeline am I choosing to collapse today? Anchor it with a single sentence, spoken aloud, in the tone of already having. Midday, set a gentle alarm. When it rings, pause and ask, am I still holding the signal? If not, flip the field. Close your eyes. Breathe the new identity back into your body. And at night, before sleep, revisit your day. not to judge, but to feel gratitude for every moment you held the signal, and compassion for every moment you learned. Let that be your loop. Let that be your practice, because repetition is the rewiring, and rewiring is the collapse. Remember, you are not here to wait. You are not here to try. You are here to remember who you already are. And every moment you observe from that knowing, reality shifts around you, not slowly, but quantumly. So if this message stirred something inside you, if you felt your own field recalibrating while listening, then don't let this frequency fade. Stay in it, expand it, share it, because there are thousands of others just like you on the edge of a timeline shift, looking for a signal to align with. Let this be that signal. So if you want to stay in this vibration, this clarity, this movement, hit subscribe, like this video to anchor the energy, and share it with someone whose frequency is ready to rise. This isn't just content, it's coherence. And now, you're part of it. Let the field respond.